Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're really going deep, exploring the life and career of Paul Volcker. And you've given us, well, excerpts from Paul Volcker, The Making of a Financial Legend. And wow, there is a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, Paul Volcker, his story, it's one of those that goes way beyond just finance. It's about leadership, integrity, and, let's be honest, a healthy dose of stubbornness. I think actually it's incredibly relevant even today to how we see influence, how power really works.
Absolutely. And you know what's fascinating? His upbringing, Teaneck, New Jersey, it seems so different from, that high stakes world of finance he ends up dominating. But his father, the town manager, seems like a huge influence, right? This
Yeah.
strong sense of integrity, public service, it's everywhere. The book even mentions this incident. Heavy snowfall, head of public works, tries to do the Volcker family a favor.
Oh, trying to get on the town manager's good side. Classic. Let me guess. Sending a snowplow right to their doorstep.
Exactly. And Volcker's father shuts it down immediately. No special treatment, not even the appearance of it. It's like this is the foundation, the ethics that really shaped Volcker's worldview.
And that commitment to fairness, putting public service above personal gain,
Yeah.
that becomes Paul Volcker Jr.'s defining characteristic. It's like you can draw a straight line from that snowplow incident to those huge decisions he made later as chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Speaking of his path to the Fed, even his education, his early career, it's all these unexpected turns. Like you read the excerpts, and he almost went to his dad's alma mater, become an engineer, then, almost on a whim, applies to Princeton, ends up there almost by chance.
Almost like he stumbled onto his destiny. He even admitted, right, not particularly ambitious at that point. But this seems to be the thing with Volcker. He sees an opportunity, even if it wasn't part of some master plan, and he seizes it. Take his thesis at Princeton, for example. He nearly failed, just not engaged with the topic.
But that near failure, it gets him a fellowship. And where? Of all places, the Federal Reserve. Talk about sliding doors. But it's at the Fed where his talent for economics really shines. The way he grasped complex ideas, the biography even uses the phrase regurgitating information, though it was obviously much more than that.
Well, absolutely. Volcker, he didn't just absorb information, he got it. The intricacies of monetary policy. It was like his brain was wired for this stuff. And that experience early on at the Fed, crucial to his later success, especially when he went back as chairman in the late 70s.
And that's where it really gets interesting. America, late 1970s, runaway inflation. This wasn't just some theory, right? This was impacting everyone. The book really drives home how serious it was.
Yeah, inflation was at a staggering 13% by the time Volcker took over at the Fed. Think about that for a second. Money in your pocket, losing value fast,
Yeah.
recipe for disaster.
And most people, even President Carter at the time, they didn't quite grasp how radically different Volcker's approach was going to be. This was not going to be popular. Instead of interest rates being the main focus, he was going after the money supply itself.
Exactly. Volcker believed that to truly curb inflation, he had to control the actual amount of money circulating in the economy. But, and this is key, to do that, you need a deep, deep understanding of how it all works and the risks involved.
So controlling the money supply to, rein in inflation, it sounds simple enough on paper. But in reality, that must have been a huge undertaking. How did Volcker actually do it, and what were some of the downsides he had to consider?
Oh, it was a massive undertaking. One of the biggest tools at his disposal was the federal funds rate. That's the interest rate banks use when they lend money to each other. And by raising that rate, the Fed, they essentially make it more expensive for banks to borrow. And that, of course, trickles down. Businesses, individuals, loans get pricier for everyone. It's this tightening of credit that's supposed to slow down spending, which in turn hopefully brings inflation under control.
Makes sense, but I can't imagine that came without some pretty serious consequences. The biography, it talks about this pivotal event, the Saturday Night Massacre. What was the lead up to that? Paint us a picture of what actually happened at this meeting.
Picture this. It's the weekend, and Volcker calls this super secret meeting. The Federal Reserve Board of Governors, they're all there. And some of them, very little notice, even less information about what Volcker's about to drop on them. The tension in that room must have been thick. He knew he was asking them to make a tough call, one with potentially huge political and economic fallout.
And he was facing pushback, right, from the board. Not everyone was thrilled with this new direction.
You're right, plenty of pushback. Some members, they were used to the old ways of doing things. And Volcker, this was a hard left turn. Their argument, this plan, it'll stifle growth, could even trigger a recession. But Volcker, he was convinced this was the only way. Break the back of inflation no matter the cost.
And in the end, he got his way. That's what they mean by the Saturday Night Massacre, this unwavering commitment to his strategy, even with that much opposition. But what happened next? What were the immediate consequences? Did it work?
It did work,
Oh.
eventually. But the immediate aftermath, let's just say it was a bumpy ride. The prime rate, that's the interest rate banks charge their Beth customers, it shot up to 21.5%. Can you imagine? Trying to buy a house, start a business with interest rates that high.
It's almost hard to even fathom. Sounds like the cure, at least for a while there, was just as painful as the disease.
That's one way to put it. Recession hit hard. Businesses struggling, people losing jobs. And Volcker, he became the face of that pain, the target of a lot of public anger.
So we've talked about the impact of Volcker's decisions, how they really shook things up. But I'm curious, about the man behind those decisions. What about the personal side of things? The biography mentions sacrifices, challenges, especially within his family.
Yeah, that's a side of him you don't always hear about. Behind this, titan of finance, he was a husband, a father, just like anyone else, dealing with the ups and downs of family life. And his family, well, they faced their share of hurdles.
His wife, Barbara, for one, battling diabetes for much of her life, that's a challenge in itself. And on top of that, raising a family being that bedrock of support for Volcker's career, which was anything but low-key.
And their son, Jim, he lived with cerebral palsy. And you really get a sense, reading this biography, of his incredible strength, navigating a world that wasn't always built with his needs in mind.
It really makes you wonder, how did Volcker balance it all? The relentless dedication to his work, the demands of his family, constant travel, long hours, these massive decisions weighing on him. Where did he find the time?
That's something a lot of us struggle with, even without the fate of the economy resting on our shoulders. And the book doesn't sugarcoat it, their marriage. It faced strains, the separations, the financial worries, very real problems.
Speaking of finances, the book actually mentions that Barbara, she felt the strain of their financial situation, which is kind of ironic because Volcker was known for being frugal, like really frugal. Powerful position, but lived modestly. Took the shuttle home on weekends, even did laundry at his daughter's place.
That's almost hard to believe, right? Someone at that level, living so simply. But that was Volcker. Sense of duty, no need for extravagance. His focus, the mission. Do what he thought was right for the country, even if it meant personal sacrifices.
But for Barbara, it couldn't have been easy. Dealing with her health, the kids, the day-to-day, while he's out there battling inflation must have been tough.
It does make you think. Even those who achieve incredible things, they still face those human challenges. Volcker's story, it's like this testament to resilience, his and his family's.
And the book talks about his close relationship with his daughter, Janice. She was a big support, even went to events with him when Barbara couldn't.
Right, and she gives this unique perspective on him, supportive, but she describes it as tough love, always there for guidance, a listening ear. But he also really believed in, letting his kids find their own way, learn from their mistakes.
That actually tracks with what we learned about his own upbringing, right? His father, those values, self-reliance, personal responsibility. It seems like that was a constant throughout Volcker's life.
Definitely speaks to the power of how we're raised. Those values from our parents, they shape us. Our worldview, our relationships, how we handle challenges.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Paul Volcker's life, what are the big takeaways for our listener? What can we learn from his story, both the personal and the professional?
There's a lot to unpack there. I think the first one that jumps out is integrity. Volcker, he held on to his principles. No matter the pressure, the criticism, he never wavered. Difficult decisions, unpopular decisions, he made them based on what he thought was right, not what was easy.
And he wasn't afraid to stand alone, even with those in power saying, change course. That kind of courage, sticking to your guns, it's rare, especially in the world of politics and finance, where it seems like the winds are always shifting.
Absolutely. And you can't forget his dedication to public service. Volcker, he saw his skills, his intellect, as a way to make a real difference. And it wasn't just a job for him. Even after he left the Fed, he was looking for ways to contribute, to lend his expertise.
His story shows us that, yeah, one person's actions, they can have a huge impact. Those decisions he made at the Fed, they didn't just disappear. They ripple through the U.S. economy, changed how we think about inflation, monetary policy.
And lastly, and I think this is important, we have to remember, even the most accomplished people, they're still human. Personal struggles, triumphs, failures, dealing with family relationships, just like all of us.
Good reminder that success, it's not a straight line. There are setbacks, sacrifices, tough calls to make. It's part of the journey.
Exactly. And so for our listeners, as you're facing your own decisions, your own challenges this week, think about this. What would Volcker do? Would he take the easy way out, or would he push for that solution, the one that might be unpopular in the moment but ultimately serves a greater purpose, something to chew on as you navigate your own path?